The Observer. In my 300 cycles as a xenological researcher for the Galactic Council of Sciences, I had never encountered a species quite like humans. My work focused on studying emerging civilizations, but humans defied every classification system we had developed over millennia of observation. I am Sixtal, and my species prides itself on logical analysis and methodical documentation. We joined the galactic community over 1,000 cycles ago, and since then, we've helped categorize and understand hundreds of species. But humans broke our models. The first time I witnessed human behavior in person, I was stationed at Outpost Delta 7, a bustling trade hub at the edge of human space. A human vessel had suffered catastrophic engine failure and was drifting helplessly. Standard protocol dictated that the closest ships should continue their routes and alert emergency services. Instead, 3 merchant vessels, each from different human nations that were technically in a trade war, immediately broke course to assist. This made no sense. These humans were sacrificing profitable trading runs and risking their ships to help competitors. When I interviewed them afterward, they seemed confused by my questions. "You help when someone needs help," they said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the galaxy. But it wasn't obvious. It was economically illogical and potentially dangerous. That incident was just the beginning. I watched humans consistently break what we thought were universal constants of intelligent behavior. They would risk their lives for recreational activities, deliberately consume substances that altered their mental states for fun, and form deep emotional attachments to artificial constructs and non-sentient creatures. Most puzzling was their approach to problem-solving. While other species carefully analyzed situations and followed established protocols, humans seemed to operate on what they called gut feelings, making snap decisions based on incomplete data that somehow worked out more often than probability suggested they should. I remember watching a human engineer named Sarah Chen tackle a radiation leak at the outpost. While our experts were still running simulations and calculating optimal solutions, she grabbed some maintenance tools, jury-rigged a containment field using parts from her communication device, and sealed the leak using a technique that violated 3 different laws of engineering. When I asked her to explain her methodology, she shrugged and said she had a hunch it would work. The most frustrating part was that I couldn't dismiss these incidents as anomalies. My research team documented thousands of similar cases across human space. Humans would alternate between incredible acts of self-sacrifice and baffling self-interest, between brilliant innovation and seemingly stupid risks, between fierce independence and unconditional cooperation. Traditional xenological models suggested that as species evolve, they developed more consistent and predictable behavioral patterns. Humans did the opposite. They seemed to become more unpredictable as their civilization advanced. They celebrated their contradictions, embraced chaos, and somehow turned their inconsistency into a strength. My preliminary report to the Council was met with skepticism. Several of my peers suggested that I had become too emotionally invested in my research subjects, a common warning in our field. But I knew I was onto something important. Humans weren't just another species to categorize. They represented something entirely new in the galaxy. As I compiled my observations and prepared for a more detailed study, I had no idea that I was about to witness an incident that would not only validate my theories, but would change our understanding of humanity forever. Looking back now, I realize that what we initially saw as human inconsistency was actually a form of adaptation so advanced that our logical minds couldn't comprehend it. The real breakthrough in understanding humans was just around the corner, and it would begin with what we thought was a routine mining operation in the Cygnus sector. But before I tell you about that, you need to understand just how deeply humans had confused and fascinated the galactic community. Because without that context, what happened next would seem as impossible as, well, as impossible as humans themselves. The incident. The Cygnus deep mining facility wasn't supposed to be remarkable. It was one of dozens of joint operations between humans and various species, extracting rare minerals from the cores of dead stars. I had chosen it as an observation post precisely because it was ordinary, a perfect control group for my ongoing research into human behavior. The facility's crew was a mix of species, humans working alongside Vraxians, silicon-based beings who excelled at structural engineering, Meridians, energy beings who could safely navigate radioactive environments, and my own people serving as technical advisors. Everything ran according to carefully calculated protocols and schedules. Until it didn't. The first warning came from the quantum sensors, a microscopic fracture in the facility's containment field. By all standard calculations, we had approximately 47 minutes before the field would fail completely, exposing the station to the crushing gravitational forces of the stellar remnant below. The evacuation protocols were clear. Essential personnel first, then support staff, and finally research teams like mine. That's when Station Chief Helena Martinez did something that would have gotten her immediately relieved of duty in any other species command structure. She countermanded the evacuation order. The containment field isn't just protecting us, she announced over the station's comm system. It's holding back radiation that would sterilize 3 habitable worlds in this sector. We're not leaving until we fix it. The Vraxian engineering team immediately protested, presenting calculations showing the impossibility of repairs within the available time frame. The Meridians, despite their natural resistance to radiation, declared the risk levels unacceptable. But the humans started brainstorming. What happened next still defies my attempt at logical documentation. Chief Martinez gathered her human crew and began assigning roles that completely ignored their actual specialties. She put a hydroponics technician in charge of power distribution, had a security officer working on shield harmonics, and, most bafflingly, gave critical calculations to a human who described himself as a hobby juggler. When I tried to point out the obvious problems with this approach, Martinez just grinned and said, "Sometimes you need fresh eyes on a problem. People who don't know something's impossible are the ones who make it possible." The next 39 minutes were chaos by any civilized standard. Humans ran through the corridors carrying equipment they weren't certified to use, shouting ideas that contradicted basic physics, and somehow convincing some of the alien crew to join their madness. The hobby juggler, it turned out, had an intuitive understanding of orbital mechanics that he claimed came from throwing stuff around for fun. With less than 5 minutes remaining, they implemented their solution. It required simultaneously venting atmosphere from 17 different points in the station, using the expelled air as makeshift maneuvering thrusters, while redirecting power through a series of circuits that the Vraxians swore would explode. The hydroponics technician had somehow figured out how to use the facility's plant growth lights to reinforce the weakening containment field. It worked. Not only did it work, but their jury-rigged solution proved more efficient than the original containment system. When I asked Chief Martinez how she knew this incomprehensible combination of violations of standard procedure would succeed, she gave me the distinctly human expression, a shrug. "We didn't know," she admitted. "But that's the thing about humans. We do our best work when we don't know what we're doing. Knowledge is great, but sometimes it just tells you all the reasons something won't work. Ignorance lets you try anyway." That evening, as I watched humans and aliens celebrating their survival in the station's recreation area, I began to formulate a theory. The incident had demonstrated something crucial about human nature, something that went beyond their apparent randomness. There was a pattern to their chaos, a method to their madness that my logical mind was only beginning to grasp. But my theory would have to wait, because at that moment, my research equipment detected an anomaly that would lead us to an even greater crisis, one that would put humanity's peculiar nature to the ultimate test. The theory. The anomaly my instruments detected that night wasn't just another quirk of deep space. As I reviewed the data in my research pod, I realized I was looking at something that shouldn't exist, a pattern of quantum fluctuations that suggested intelligent design, but at a scale that defied comprehension. The discovery coincided with my ongoing analysis of human behavior, and that's when the pieces started falling into place. For centuries, The galactic community had been trying to understand humans by applying our own logical frameworks. We had been asking the wrong questions entirely. I called an emergency meeting with the station's senior staff. Chief Martinez arrived first, carrying what humans call coffee, a stimulant that, by any rational standard, should be classified as a dangerous drug. Yet humans consumed it daily to enhance their cognitive functions. The anomaly isn't random, I explained, projecting the data patterns. It's a response pattern. Something out there is watching us, studying us, just as I've been studying humans. But it's doing so from a perspective so alien that even I, a professional xenologist, can barely comprehend it. The Vraxian engineers immediately began calculating probable origins and compositions. The Meridians started formulating communication protocols. But Martinez just stared at the patterns, sipping her coffee, with that peculiar expression humans get when they're about to say something that defies all logic. "It's scared," she said. Everyone stopped. I adjusted my sensory appendages, certain I had misheard. "Chief Martinez, there's no possible way you could determine the emotional state of an unknown entity from these quantum patterns." She pointed to a recurring sequence in the data. "Look at the timing. It's like a heartbeat, but irregular. When my daughter's scared, she gets the same kind of arrhythmic breathing. Whatever this is, it's not just studying us. It's trying to decide if we're a threat." I was about to explain the numerous scientific problems with anthropomorphizing quantum fluctuations when my theory suddenly expanded. Humans didn't just break patterns, they saw patterns where none existed. And sometimes, impossibly, they were right. Over the next several days, I documented a phenomenon that would have gotten me dismissed from the Science Council if I hadn't had multiple credentialed witnesses. Martins and her human crew began communicating with the anomaly through what they called hunches and gut feelings. They made decisions based on dreams, implemented solutions because they felt right, and gradually, impossibly, established what appeared to be genuine contact. The entity, as it turned out, was a probe from a civilization that existed primarily in quantum states, a concept that our finest scientists had theorized, but dismissed as impossible. This civilization had been observing our galaxy for millennia, trying to understand us just as we try to understand them. And they had remained hidden, because every species they encountered approached the universe with rigid, predictable logic. Every species except humans. Through methods that defied documentation, the humans began establishing a rapport with the quantum entity. They approached it not with scientific protocols, but with jokes, stories, and what they called vibes. They treated an unfathomable cosmic intelligence like a shy neighbor who needed to be coaxed out of their shell. And that's when my theory crystallized. Humans weren't illogical. They had evolved beyond logic. In a universe governed by laws and patterns, they had developed the ability to operate outside those patterns, while still functioning within them. They were living paradoxes, and that made them uniquely suited to bridge gaps that no other species could cross. As I compiled my observations, I realized this discovery would reshape our understanding not just of humans, but of intelligence itself. However, I never got to finish my report, because that's when the entity delivered its warning. A message that would require every contradictory aspect of human nature to save not just our galaxy, but existence itself. The test. The quantum entity's warning came not in words or data, but in a series of impressions that only the humans seemed able to interpret. According to them, our universe was about to encounter another universe, one with fundamentally different physical laws. The resulting collision would rewrite the basic fabric of existence, effectively ending all life as we knew it. The entity's civilization had detected this threat eons ago and had been searching for a species capable of helping them prevent it. They needed a species that could comprehend and operate within multiple contradictory realities simultaneously. Every logical species they'd encountered had failed their tests. Their minds simply couldn't handle the cognitive dissonance required. Then they found humans. "So we need to stop two universes from colliding," Chief Martinez summarized. somehow making an apocalyptic threat sound like a minor inconvenience. Any idea how long we have? The impression I received suggested 3 standard galactic days. The Vraxian engineering team immediately declared it impossible. The Meridians began emergency evacuation protocols. Not that evacuation to another galaxy would help. I started calculating the minimal time needed just to convene an emergency session of the Science Council. The humans, characteristically, started spitballing ideas. What if we don't stop them from colliding? Suggested Dr. Chen, the engineer who had saved us during the radiation leak. What if we guide them into a controlled collision instead? The quantum entity's response was a burst of patterns that my instruments interpreted as mathematical impossibility. The humans interpreted it as encouragement. What followed was the most bizarre scientific collaboration in galactic history. The humans formed what they called a brainstorming circle, combining theoretical physics with what appeared to be completely unrelated concepts. They drew inspiration from ancient human activities like surfing and dancing, proposing solutions that violated every known law of physics. The quantum entity, rather than dismissing these apparent absurdities, began responding with its own variations on their ideas. It was like watching 2 species communicate in pure imagination, each encouraging the other to think further outside their respective dimensional boxes. The solution they finally devised was so profoundly impossible that I still have trouble describing it in scientific terms. Using the quantum entity's ability to exist in multiple states and humanity's unique talent for embracing contradiction, they proposed creating what they called a universal shock absorber, a field of pure possibility where both sets of physical laws could exist simultaneously. The technical implementation required cooperation on a scale the galaxy had never seen. The quantum entity would provide the underlying framework, while various species contributed their specialized knowledge. But at the core of it all were the humans, whose minds could somehow hold multiple contradictory concepts and see how they could work together. As we approached the critical moment, I watched humanity demonstrate every paradoxical trait that had confused me over my years of study. They were simultaneously terrified and excited, careful and reckless, deadly serious, and making jokes about the end of existence. They approached the potential doom of all reality with what they called gallows humor, finding amusement in the darkest possible circumstances. When the moment of collision arrived, I witnessed something that changed my understanding of not just humanity, but of existence itself. The humans, working in perfect chaotic harmony with the quantum entity, did something that my species still struggles to describe. They made the impossible possible. The understanding. The collision of universes wasn't the cataclysm we expected. Instead, thanks to humanity's impossible solution, it became a moment of transformation. The human concept of a universal shock absorber worked, though not in any way our physics had predicted. Instead of destruction, we witnessed creation. The zone where the universes met became something entirely new, a region where both sets of physical laws coexisted in what humans called a quantum dance. The quantum entities could move freely through this space, and for the first time, manifest in ways our universe could perceive and interact with directly. But the real revelation wasn't the physics. It was what we learned about intelligence itself. For millennia, the galactic community had believed that advancement meant becoming more logical, more ordered, more predictable. Humans showed us that true advancement meant something else entirely. It meant maintaining the ability to adapt, to contradict oneself, to be both rational and irrational as circumstances required. Chief Martinez explained it to me as we watched the new hybrid space shimmer with possibilities. You know why humans seem so random to other species? Because we never stopped being everything we were while becoming everything we are. We're still the cave people who figured out fire, the dreamers who looked at stars and imagined reaching them, the idiots who tried impossible things because we didn't know they were impossible. The quantum entities shared a similar insight. They had evolved so far beyond normal matter that they had lost touch with the chaotic potential that gave rise to their existence. Humans reminded them of what they'd forgotten, that consciousness itself was built on embracing contradiction. In the cycles that followed, everything changed. The galactic community had to revise its entire understanding of intelligence and progress. Species that had looked down on humanity's apparent primitive chaos began studying them, learning to reconnect with their own capacity for productive contradiction. I submitted my final report to the Science Council with a conclusion that would have seemed absurd when I began my research. Humans didn't need to make sense. Their gift to the galaxy wasn't logic or order. It was the ability to thrive in chaos, to find patterns in randomness, and to believe in possibility even when faced with impossibility. The quantum entities established permanent contact through the hybrid space, and their first request was to study humanity more closely. They were particularly fascinated by human art, music, and something called dad jokes, concepts that existed purely for their own sake, serving no logical purpose except to make existence more interesting. As for me, I've had to revise every conclusion I ever drew about intelligence and evolution. My species prided itself on logic and analysis, but humans taught us that true wisdom comes from knowing when to abandon logic, when to embrace chaos, and when to simply say why not, in the face of impossible odds. The last time I saw Chief Martinez, she was teaching a group of quantum entities how to play poker, a human game that perfectly encapsulated their nature, combining mathematics, psychology, deception, and chance. The entities were baffled by the concept of bluffing, but they were eager to learn. "You know what your problem was," she told me, dealing another hand. "You kept trying to figure out what makes humans make sense. But making sense was never the point. The point was making the impossible possible, one crazy idea at a time. And for once, that made perfect sense to me." End.